notice something strange. The more you understand people, the harder it becomes to enjoy them. The more clearly you see power, manipulation, and desire at work, the less you can participate without feeling false. This video solves one question that quietly haunts intelligent minds. Why does understanding the game make life feel heavier instead of easier? And why can't you go back once you see it? There comes a moment when awareness stops feeling like a gift and begins to feel like a fracture. At first, it appears harmless, an increased sensitivity to patterns, a sharper perception of motives, a clearer grasp of cause and effect. You believe you are merely becoming wiser. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, participation begins to decay. What once felt immediate now feels mediated by thought. What once flowed now pauses under inspection. Awareness does not arrive all at once. It accumulates. You notice how words are chosen not for truth but for effect. You notice how kindness appears most often when it is useful. You notice how outrage follows fashion, how loyalty bends under reward, how confidence grows louder when it is hollow. These observations do not announce themselves as revelations. They present themselves as small discomforts, as a quiet sense that something is off. And then the damage is done. Because once you see the structure beneath behavior, you can no longer pretend that interactions are spontaneous. Every gesture begins to feel rehearsed, every emotional display conditional. You stop responding instinctively and start responding interpretively. You are no longer inside the moment. You are standing beside it, watching it unfold. Participation requires a certain blindness. To act freely, one must not constantly see the strings. The child plays without questioning the rules. The adult enjoys without dissecting the pleasure. But awareness dissolves this innocence. It replaces immediacy with distance. You hesitate not because you are weak, but because you see too many layers at once. Conversation becomes analysis. Friendship becomes observation. Conflict becomes prediction. This is why awareness feels isolating. Others continue to play with conviction, while you move cautiously, burdened by understanding. They laugh fully, you notice timing. They argue passionately, you notice strategy. They commit emotionally, you notice risk. And the tragedy is that nothing external has changed. The world is the same. People behave as they always have. Only your position has shifted. You are no longer submerged. You are afloat, detached, unable to drown in illusion. The game of life depends on emotional momentum. Desire pushes action forward. Anger fuels confrontation. Hope sustains effort. But awareness interferes with these forces. It asks questions at moments when impulse demands obedience. It interrupts desire with foresight, anger with consequence, hope with probability. You begin to feel artificial when you act. You catch yourself performing reactions instead of experiencing them. Even sincerity becomes suspect because you are aware of how sincerity itself can be used as a tool. You are no longer certain whether you are feeling something or merely fulfilling an expected role. This is a cost of insight, the erosion of naturalness. Others mistake this distance for coldness or arrogance. They assume you think yourself superior. In reality, you feel disqualified. You feel like someone who arrived backstage and can no longer enjoy the play from the audience. You see the lighting, the cues, the rehearsed emotions. Applause feels strange when you know how carefully it was engineered. Awareness does not make you immune to the game. It makes you hyper-conscious within it. You still feel desire, fear, ambition, loneliness. But now these impulses are exposed. You see their origin. You see how they manipulate you. And this self-knowledge creates resistance. To participate fully, one must surrender to illusion. To love without restraint, one must believe in permanence. To compete without hesitation, one must believe in meaning. Awareness strips these beliefs down to their mechanics. It shows how attachment forms, how rivalry escalates, how validation substitutes for worth. And so action slows. Not because you are incapable, but because every action now carries the weight of comprehension. You know what follows. You know what it leads to. You know what it costs. Awareness does not destroy the game by opposing it. It destroys it by revealing it. Once revealed, the game loses its spell. And without the spell, participation feels dishonest, forced, almost theatrical. You can still play, but you are no longer inside the illusion. You move like an actor who remembers a script while speaking the lines. The words come out, but something essential is missing: presence. Power thrives on unconscious players. Power does not announce itself openly. It does not declare its intentions or explain its methods. It survives precisely because it remains unnoticed, because it operates through habits that feel natural, emotions that feel personal, and social rules that feel unquestionable. Power is most effective when those under its influence believe they are acting freely. The unconscious player is not foolish. In fact, unconscious participation is a default condition of social life. Most people do not wake each day intending to submit, imitate, or comply. They simply follow impulses that feel like their own. They pursue approval without naming it. They accept hierarchies without examining their origin. They obey expectations while calling it responsibility. This is the soil in which power grows. Every social structure depends on this blindness. Status works only if people believe it reflects worth. Authority works only if people believe it is deserved. Morality works only if people believe it is universal rather than convenient. Once these beliefs are questioned, power loses its natural appearance and begins to look mechanical, even fragile. The unconscious player never asks who benefits. They ask only what is normal. Power does not need to coerce them. It does not need violence or force. It merely needs repetition. Norms repeated long enough feel inevitable. Rules obeyed long enough feel moral. Inequality endured long enough feels natural. The unconscious mind adapts, justifies, and rationalizes what it cannot challenge. Those who see this begin to notice something unsettling. Power avoids the aware. It flows toward those who react predictably, who desire approval, who fear exclusion, who seek validation. These traits make behavior manageable. They allow influence without resistance. The unconscious player mistakes compliance for peace. They believe fitting protects them. In reality, it renders them usable. Power feeds on emotional reflex. Anger that can be provoked, shame that can be triggered, hope that can be delayed, fear that can be activated. These emotions keep people moving along predefined paths. The less aware someone is of these levers, the easier they are to pull. This is why power often appears clumsy when confronted by awareness. It grows uncomfortable when questioned calmly. It reacts aggressively when exposed without emotion. Awareness interrupts the rhythm on which power depends. It introduces unpredictability, not through rebellion, but through refusal to respond automatically. But awareness alone does not grant dominance. This is the misconception. Many believe that seeing through power places them above it. In truth, it often places them outside it. Power does not reward those who see too clearly. It rewards those who want deeply and doubt little. Those who crave recognition. Those who accept narratives. Those who internalize goals they did not choose. The aware individual becomes difficult to position. They do not chase status with hunger. They do not fear loss with desperation. They do not confuse obedience with virtue. And because of this, power has little use for them. This creates a strange inversion. Those most capable of understanding power are often the least interested in wielding it. They recognize its dependence on illusion, and illusion no longer satisfies them. To exercise power would require a return to manipulation, performance, and selective blindness. The unconscious player does not experience this conflict. They pursue influence without reflection. They dominate without guilt. They submit without resentment. Their lack of awareness protects their momentum. This is why institutions prefer enthusiasm over intelligence, loyalty over insight, obedience over understanding. The unconscious participant reinforces a system simply by moving within it. They perpetuate its values, repeat its language, and defend its structure, often believing they are defending themselves. Awareness threatens this balance, not by overthrowing power, but by withdrawing belief. And belief is the invisible currency of control. When belief collapses, power must either reveal itself openly or retreat. And revealed power is weak power. It must justify itself, explain itself, enforce itself. It loses its elegance. It loses its invisibility. Thus, power instinctively surrounds itself with those who do not question too deeply. It elevates confidence over reflection, certainty over doubt, simplicity over nuance. Not because these traits are superior, but because they are easier to direct. The unconscious player feels alive inside the game. They feel rewarded, recognized, included. The aware observer feels estranged, watching the machinery turn, seeing how incentives replace values and how narratives replace truth. Power does not fear resistance as much as it fears comprehension. Resistance can be crushed. Comprehension cannot be negotiated with. It simply steps aside and refuses to believe. Intelligence creates distance, not victory. Intelligence is often imagined as a weapon, something that sharpens one's position in the world and guarantees advantage. In reality, intelligence behaves more like a solvent. It dissolves certainty, erodes instinct, and weakens the emotional commitments that make victory possible. Where others rush forward, intelligence hesitates. Where others act, intelligence observes. And in this hesitation, distance is born. The intelligent mind does not move directly toward goals. It circles them. It asks what the goal represents, who benefits from its pursuit, and what is sacrificed along the way. This questioning interrupts momentum. While others charge with conviction, intelligence introduces reflection. Reflection is not weakness, but it is incompatible with domination. Victory requires blindness of a specific kind. One must believe that the prize matters, that the struggle is justified, that the outcome validates the effort. Intelligence refuses these comforts. It sees how easily values are assigned and reassigned, how ambition disguises insecurity, how success often rewards timing rather than merit. The intelligent person does not lack desire, but desire becomes conflicted once its origins are exposed. This conflict creates separation. In social life, those who win are rarely those who understand the situation best. They are those who commit to it most completely. They invest emotionally, defend their position aggressively, and suppress doubt when it arises. Intelligence does the opposite. It amplifies doubt. It reveals alternative interpretations. It prevents full immersion. The intelligent observer notices that most victories are theatrical. Status is conferred, not discovered. Authority is accepted, not proven. Recognition is distributed according to visibility, not depth. Understanding this does not grant leverage. It removes motivation. To compete seriously, one must care deeply about outcomes that intelligence finds arbitrary. One must accept rules that intelligence recognizes as constructed. One must play roles that intelligence sees as temporary and replaceable. This awareness drains the urgency required for triumph. Thus, intelligence does not elevate one above the contest. It relocates one outside it. From this position, the intelligent individual sees patterns others miss. They predict outcomes, anticipate reactions, and recognize cycles repeating under different names. Yet this foresight rarely translates into control. Knowing what will happen does not mean being willing to cause it. Seeing consequences does not mean accepting responsibility for them. This is why intelligence often leads to restraint rather than assertion. The intelligent person refrains not because they cannot act, but because they understand too much about the cost of action. They see how power corrupts relationships, how dominance breeds resistance, how success invites envy and surveillance. What appears as passivity is often a deliberate withdrawal. Those less reflective mistake this distance for lack of ambition. They do not see the internal refusal taking place. They do not see the values being quietly rejected. They only see absence where they expect aggression. Intelligence also isolates because it disrupts shared illusions. Collective enthusiasm depends on simplification. It requires symbols that are believed in rather than analyzed. The intelligent mind cannot suspend disbelief indefinitely. It keeps pulling the curtain back, exposing mechanisms, questioning narratives. This makes participation socially costly. People prefer allies who confirm their beliefs, not those who complicate them. They prefer confidence to nuance, certainty to ambivalence. Intelligence offers none of these comforts. It destabilizes agreement. It introduces friction into consensus. As a result, the intelligent individual is often excluded from inner circles of power, not because they are threatening, but because they are inconvenient. And yet, intelligence is not suffering. It is clarity. It exchanges victory for understanding, conquest for coherence. It sacrifices speed for depth. From the outside, this looks like failure. From within, it feels like alignment. The intelligent mind recognizes that most victories are temporary, dependent on conditions beyond control. It sees how easily winners become obsolete, how quickly hierarchies shift, how praise evaporates. This perspective does not produce despair. It produces detachment. Detachment is misunderstood as weakness, but it is a form of independence. It allows one to exist without constant comparison, without chasing approval, without submitting to artificial metrics of worth. This independence, however, does not shine. It does not dominate. It does not impress. It simply withdraws. Intelligence replaces a desire to win with a desire to understand. And understanding is a solitary act. It does not require applause. It does not demand validation. It stands apart from the noise of competition, watching it rise and fall without entering its turbulence. The intelligent person may appear to lose, but loss implies a contest they no longer accept. Freedom feels like loss before it feels like truth. Freedom is often imagined as expansion, as relief, as a removal of weight. In reality, the first sensation of freedom is absence. It arrives not as gain, but as subtraction. Something familiar disappears, certainty, belonging, direction, and in its place appears a quiet that feels unsettling rather than liberating. This is why most people resist freedom even while claiming to desire it. What is lost first is illusion. The comforting belief that life is ordered, that effort guarantees reward, that morality governs outcomes, that belonging is unconditional. These beliefs function like emotional scaffolding. They hold the individual upright within chaos. Freedom begins when this structure collapses, not violently, but through recognition. At first, this recognition feels like deprivation. You notice that rules are flexible, that principles bend when inconvenient, that loyalty is conditional, that meaning is assigned rather than discovered. The narratives that once guided action no longer convince. Motivation weakens. Urgency fades. You are left standing without the internal pressures that once pushed you forward. This feels like loss because it is loss. The loss of direction imposed from outside. The loss of borrowed purpose. The loss of emotional shortcuts that once simplified decision-making. Freedom removes the scripts. Without them, action becomes heavy. Every choice now belongs fully to you. There is no system to blame, no doctrine to hide behind, no authority to defer to. Responsibility expands inward. This expansion does not feel empowering at first. It feels exposing. This is why many people retreat from freedom once they glimpse it. They return to structures they claim to despise. They submit to routines, hierarchies, identities, not because these are true, but because they are familiar. Constraint provides relief. It narrows responsibility. It reduces ambiguity. Freedom does the opposite. It widens the field until certainty dissolves. In this state, you may feel disconnected from others, not superior, but separate. Conversations sound rehearsed. Opinions feel inherited. Conflict appear exaggerated. You begin to sense how much of human behavior is driven by fear of emptiness rather than pursuit of truth. This awareness intensifies the feeling of loss. You no longer share the same emotional investments. What excites others leaves you unmoved. What terrifies them appears predictable. You do not judge them for this, but you cannot rejoin them without dishonesty. Freedom costs belonging before it offers peace. Only later does something shift. Slowly, quietly, without announcement. The absence that once felt like deprivation begins to feel like space. The silence that once felt hollow begins to feel clean. You realize that without imposed meaning, you are no longer forced into roles that contradict your nature. Truth replaces comfort, not dramatically, but steadily. You begin to see life without decoration. Not pessimistically, but plainly. Desire no longer disguises itself as destiny. Power no longer masquerades as virtue. Success no longer demands reverence. Failure no longer requires shame. This is not happiness in the conventional sense. It is alignment, a reduction of internal conflict. You stop chasing emotions that were never stable. You stop fearing outcomes that were never guaranteed. Freedom does not promise pleasure. It promises coherence. This coherence feels quiet compared to the noise of ambition and fear. It does not stimulate. It does not intoxicate. It grounds. And because it lacks spectacle, it is often mistaken for emptiness by those who have never experienced it. The truth is that freedom strips life down to its essentials. It removes false urgency. It removes artificial comparison. It removes inherited guilt. What remains is smaller, but it is yours. You are no longer driven by the need to prove, impress, or dominate. Not because you have transcended desire, but because desire no longer controls you. You see it arise. You see it pass. You are not compelled to obey it. This is where freedom finally reveals itself, not as escape, but as sovereignty. Not as euphoria, but as steadiness. You no longer need to win the game because you are no longer defined by it. You no longer need permission because you are no longer asking the world to validate your existence. Freedom does not feel like triumph. It feels like standing alone without panic. And only those who endure the initial loss are capable of reaching this truth.